Hello, people of the internet. I'm Jontje, and I give complicated answers to simple questions. And I'm also autistic. So, the first question I'm going to answer is, what exactly is that? What is autism? And this may seem quite straightforward, but we'll see about that. There's numerous videos out there about autism and what it is, and maybe also what it isn't, and what pretty much any of them do is just list the symptoms, and they're pretty much done. And I guess I'm gonna start out very quickly by doing just that, just in case you don't know. And their description I'm using are from ASN, which I will provide a link somewhere. So what are the basic symptoms of autism? Well, first of all, there's different sensory experiences. They're often heightened, so for example, I can hear, and maybe you can as well, the lights that I'm using to light this video bus, which is annoying, but I need light. And but they're not heightened for everyone. Sometimes they can be the opposite as well. And these also include synesthesia, which I'm not a native speaker, don't ask me how to pronounce that. And that basically means that your senses connect in some way. So a common one would be, for example, people seeing colors while they're hearing music. But there can be more unusual connections as well. So another symptom of autism is having non-standard ways of learning and approaching problem solving. So that might mean, for example, that in a specific subject they might actually find it easier to learn what is generally considered the difficult things before they learn what is considered to be the simple things. Another symptom can be deeply focused thinking and very passionate interests. And in the autism community, they're generally called special interests, or shortened to SPINs. And these can be very, very long term, so that a person might spend their whole lives dedicated to one subject, or they might be more short term, and that they maybe just spend a month reading everything they can about it, or even just a week. Another one is, of course, atypical and sometimes repetitive movement, which is commonly known as stimming. And so that might be hand flapping or rocking back and forth. And there's a whole variety. It's a whole nother video on what stimming can look like. And of course, one of the most commonly known symptoms of autism is a need for consistency and routine. And there's various stereotypes out there about that, and it might look like that in a person, and they might not seem like they have any routines at all. But many do in some ways, and sometimes it's just they want to always sit at a specific seat somewhere, even though the rest of their life is just a mess. And another one, which I think is also quite known, is difficulties in understanding and expressing languages, and specifically understanding nonverbal communication and understanding communication that may not be obvious. So understanding certain expressions, or understanding things too literally. But it can also be having trouble reading facial expressions or gestures. And sometimes it's not even that they have trouble understanding. They're just sometimes language itself might be very it might be very difficult to focus on the language, because there's so many more sounds around that most people can just shut out and just listen to the person they're talking to, but many autistic people can't do that, and so we constantly have to concentrate very much to listen to the language, so that trying to just notice body language is too much, and it would be just another distraction, and so we never learn it, or even because looking at people is just too much, and so we just sort of look away while someone is talking, even though we're listening to them, and actually because we are listening to them and trying to understand what they say, that we don't look at them. And the last symptom that I just want to mention briefly is having difficulties in understanding and expressing typical social interaction. So that might just mean not really being able to understand small talk, also because it's usually not very, very genuine, and so some people, sometimes we can have problems with that, or just not knowing how to do things, not knowing how to approach someone if we would like to talk to them, or not being aware of which topics it is okay to discuss in a situation at which most people would like to avoid. So that's a rundown of the basic symptoms of autism, and so we're done, right? No, we're not. So why aren't we done? What are we missing? Well, we've defined what autism looks like, and most people seem to generally agree on what autism looks like, although, the subcategories, there's a lot of discussion on there, and that is a whole bunch of other videos. But there's a basic thing when we're asking, what is autism? And that's, well, what is autism other than the symptoms? So most people, I think, know it as a disability, but then why? Where does it come from? Why is autism? Is it some people say it's a disorder. Some people are saying it's some sort of epidemic that is stealing our children, and yeah. I think a lot of people might have heard about that already. And then some people say it's not a disorder at all. It's just another way of being human. So what's up with that? Why can we have so many opinions, even though we generally all agree on what autism looks like in a person? And well, the thing is that autism, when we talk about autism, we talk about symptoms of autism. And well, autism is a syndrome. And what is a syndrome? It's a collection of symptoms which usually appear together, which is exactly what we have in autism. But that doesn't make it anything other than a syndrome, a collection of symptoms. We don't know why these might have appeared together for some reason. All we know is that they usually appear together. And so when they do, we talk about autism. And the thing with a syndrome, which also happens to many other terms like ADHD and to some degree also depression and so on, what people forget is that autism, even within a sort of medical definition, which syndrome is a medical definition, it doesn't actually say anything about the cause. It doesn't even say they all have to be the same cause. They can have very, very different causes. Depression has very, very different causes, for example. But I'm not trying to compare, to say that autism and depression are somehow similar things, because in some ways they are, in many ways they are not. But we don't really know. We don't really have a concrete idea of why exactly autism just is sometimes, and sometimes it's not, and there's very conflicting ideas in science also about that. And there's the possibility that it has multiple causes, or maybe just no cause at all, and maybe it's actually 3 different things that we just can't recognize right now. And it might be a mix of all of those things. And so it's when we're talking, that's something I think we should be far more aware when we're talking about autism, but also when we're talking about especially many other mental things, many other things that fall under the category of neurodivergence and so on, that we don't actually know as much about the human body and the brain as we think we do. And we think this is just very clear things, and because we have this thing called autism, all autistic people must therefore be the same, and there must be something in common for all of those people other than they sort of have the same symptoms. But that really doesn't have to be the case. And so in the end there actually isn't really an answer to what is autism, because we don't know yet, and maybe we never will know. So in the end, I think everybody needs to find their own way in how they define autism for themselves, whether you are autistic or you have a child or a sibling or whatever who's autistic. So in the end, I think everybody needs to find to a degree their own definition of what autism is for them, especially if you are autistic, but also remember that this might not be the experience that someone else has had. But of course the baseline for all of this is that autistic people are human, and because they are human they inherently have dignity, and they are to be treated with respect, whether they're your child, your sibling, your patient, or just someone you see on the street, or whether they're yourself. You need to treat them with the same respect that you treat everyone else with. So I hope that you've liked this video and that you've learned something and I've made you think about something, possibly autism. And if you have liked it, please consider to like, comment or subscribe or all of these things, and I will see you again soon.